Welcome to the second episode of the CJ Werleman Show. Now let's get into it. This week we are staying with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because, well, how could we not? Certainly given Israeli security forces have launched what is essentially a war against peaceful Palestinian worshippers at al-Aqsa Mosque and peaceful Palestinian protesters in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. And to the surprise of absolutely nobody, the international news media is either ignoring Israel's unprovoked barbarism or covering it in its usual way of pretending both sides are equal to blame. And while these news organisations have their collective thumb up their nostrils, Western and Arab governments are conspicuously and deceptively silent. While this is typical of their behaviour towards anything related to Israel, and while we're seeing this time and time again from Israel's siege of Gaza in 2014 to non-stop settler violence against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, what is happening at this moment in Jerusalem is a big, big deal. What we are witnessing is a tyrannical apartheid regime beating, gassing, shooting and bombing whomever it wants, whenever it wants and wherever it wants. A fanatical regime so drunk on its own power, assured that no level of its criminality and terrorism will go punished by its Western and Arab allies. So what exactly are these governments turning a blind eye to this time? The Israeli government is collectively punishing the entire Palestinian population for ongoing protests against its violent and forced expulsion of 28 Palestinian families in the occupied Jerusalem suburb of Sheikh Jarrah. A sinister and duplicitous move designed to make way for a Jews-only neighborhood, the very definition of ethnic cleansing. On Friday, Israeli security forces backed this effort up by carrying out a violent raid on Palestinian worshippers who had gathered for evening prayers on the final Friday of Ramadan. These soldiers invaded the mosque with the help of Jewish settlers. Wait, let me try that one again. Jewish terrorists invaded Islam's third holiest site with the assistance of Israeli soldiers spraying Palestinian worshippers with rubber-coated steel bullets, tear gas and flashbang grenades, leaving hundreds injured and dozens hospitalized. But despite global calls of condemnation, Israel did the exact same thing again just 2 days later, leaving an even greater number of Palestinian worshippers shot, beaten, crushed and gasping for air. Now let's call a spade a spade. If what's taking place at Islam's third holiest site right now also happened at, say, I don't know, the Vatican or Sagrada Familia or the Church of Notre Dame, the United States government would be threatening war against the perpetrators and formulating an international intervention at the United Nations. But because this is Israel, the United States President, Joe Biden, a devout Catholic, has not muttered a single word of condemnation, nada, zip, zilch. It's almost like he doesn't own a television set or has banned himself somehow from social media. It's like see no evil, hear no evil, speak of no evil. And as the US President says not a damn word, Israeli warplanes are now doing what they do almost every Ramadan. They are bombing Gaza. In the past 48 hours, Israel has killed 20 Palestinian civilians in Gaza, 9 of whom were children. Look, I've reported on Israel's crimes for so long and so often that I've run out of words to describe the callous vindictiveness, the merciless cruelty and utter shamelessness of Israel's illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories, which is now in its 54th year. So rather than continue speaking, let's take a moment to honour the latest child victims of Israeli state terrorism. Thank you. Now I know some of you tuning into this program are unfamiliar with the details and contours of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. US and Israeli politicians have certainly done a great job in making the simple sound complex, so that you'll believe it's a problem too difficult to understand and too hard to solve when the reality is as clear as the sunset on a cloudless day. Now here's a simple exercise. Imagine for a moment what is happening to the Palestinians also happened to you in your country. Imagine, let's say, the Chinese military invaded your land, sending hundreds of thousands of its soldiers to man military checkpoints and construct bases and homes for said soldiers. And now let's say a court in Beijing ruled that you no longer have rights to your home and must make way for newly arrived Chinese migrants who are now so happen to have taken your government job or ownership of your business. Now, as this Chinese migrant population grows in numbers, they start renaming your towns and cities to Chinese names, while establishing armed militias and terrorist groups to drive you and your family and your relatives off your land and into impoverished enclaves and concentration camps. How would you feel? I mean, just be honest. I'm guessing you, like me, would take up arms and join an insurgency group. And you'd have every moral and lawful right to do so, given international law states clearly that an occupied population may use whatever means necessary to resist its occupier. I mean, it's actual law. You can go away and you can look this up. But somehow the Palestinian people have been excluded from international law and then thrown to the mercy of their foreign occupier. This is exactly what's happening in occupied Jerusalem today. Now, this is also, I guess, an opportune moment to segue to the plight of the Uyghur people in Xinjiang Autonomous Zone. What was, for a hot minute, independent East Turkestan as recently as 1944. Look, I know some of you may have your doubts about claims China is carrying out a genocide against the Uyghur, but ultimately, at the end of the day, your doubts are just plain wrong, and most likely influenced by Chinese government propaganda. What is happening in Xinjiang is undeniable. The weight of evidence reveals a systematic determination by the Chinese Communist Party to eradicate the Uyghur population, either in part or in full, meeting the very definition of genocide under international law. If you still have your doubts, then it can only be because you haven't taken the time to review the troves of leaked Chinese Communist Party documents, looked over the satellite imagery, leaked videos, thousands of survivor testimonies, eyewitness accounts, and the words of Uyghur migrants who have not heard from their missing loved ones in years. Only a fool or someone in possession of sinister motives would deny what is the largest industrial-scale persecution of a religious or ethnic minority since the Holocaust. And I say that because from the perspective of the victim, the denial of genocide is a continuation of genocide violence. The reality is this: upwards of 2, possibly 4 million Uighur Muslims have been detained in a network of concentration camps where survivors have reported detailed accounts of torture, sexual abuse, gang rape, and executions. Recently, one female survivor told the Uyghur Rights Project that Chinese guards use 4 kinds of electric shock torture on detainees. There's the chair, the glove, the helmet, and the anal rape stick. Others tell about forced sterilizations, forced family separations, forced marriages, and forced adoptions as a means to curtail the Uyghur population, with numerous studies showing as much as 80% of the Uyghur population in some areas of Xinjiang has all but disappeared. So why am I telling you this right now? I'm reminding you of these horrors because the International Olympic Committee is planning to go ahead with its decision to grant China the right to host the Winter Olympic Games next year. Now just take a moment to think about that. A country that's carrying out the largest industrial-scale persecution of a religious minority since the Holocaust has earned the right somehow to host a global once every 4 years sporting event? Have we learnt nothing from history? I mean, when a number of countries threatened to boycott the 1936 Summer Games in Berlin, Hitler gave assurances that Jewish and black athletes would be allowed to compete while denying the existence of a Jewish concentration camp at Dachau. Well, we know what happened next. A decade later, 6 million Jews would be slaughtered at the hands of Hitler's Nazi thugs, illustrating just how shameful the decision by the IOC to go ahead with Germany as the chosen host of the 1936 Games. Equally, failure to revoke Beijing's right to host next year's Games would mean that the world's top international sporting body hasn't learnt a darn thing from its regrettable history. The IOC should know what it needs to do. The question, of course, is will it? Well, that's all the time we have for this week. I mean, I hope you learned something new from our program. Look, please like and subscribe to this channel and help spread the word with your family and friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please also help us grow and expand this program, giving a voice to the voiceless by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJ Werleman. Exclusive membership benefits and content for those who support my work there. But for now, good night, good morning, or good day, wherever you are, and stay blessed.